Welcome to lesson 15 of Financial Sobriety School. In today's lesson, I'm going to talk about our brain on spending, dopamine, and what that means to our spending habits, what that means to our financial sobriety. So, you've probably heard the term dopamine or heard of dopamine. And essentially, what dopamine is when something that you're excited about happens, or let's say, let's keep it to spending, is when you buy something that you want, when you're starting to think about what you want to buy, when you're starting to make a decision about buying that starts to release dopamine into your brain, which is the brain's reward system. I don't remember where I heard it or saw it, but I remember that it was like dopamine was like the reward system in your brain was kind of like where your third eye is, and then just like constantly hitting it. That's dopamine, right? Like you're just that part of your brain just lights right up, and it's just like a dopamine hit constantly when it comes to spending, especially that's where, last lesson we were talking about breaking free from our addictive spending patterns. And so, with that, when we start to experience that dopamine hit, then that what that does is because our brain is full of neural pathways, and it's like, hey, I really like that. I liked what you were doing. The brain was getting rewarded and you were getting rewarded. And so that's when really those patterns and behaviors with excessive spending, addictive spending really start to come into play, is because we love a good dopamine hit. But what I will say is that a dopamine hit is temporary happiness. It's again, we talked about that roller coaster in last week's lesson, in lesson 14. You're up, everything feels good, you're getting that dopamine hit, your brain's lighting up, and then you start to go down. And that, when I think about that anticipation piece of spending money, I think that is actually the one thing that is again, being able to recognize when that's happening for you, when you're starting to fantasize. One of the biggest things that I would fantasize about my decision making with, or be part of my decision making, would be fantasizing about what I would look like if I wore something. What would I feel like if I was going away on a vacation? If I was, just even going out for dinner and, oh, I'd have to get a new outfit. Clothes were the biggest thing for me. So you may hear me talk a lot about, clothes and all of that, because that was my biggest spending. Was I felt like I needed to purchase clothes to prove that I was successful, to prove that I was worthy, to prove that I was enough. If I looked good, all of that meant that everything was okay. But meanwhile, I was crumbling inside, absolutely crumbling. But that dopamine hit, I would get it when I would think about, oh, when I go here, this is what I'm going to wear. And oh, I need to go get a new outfit. And then when I would see things, you would almost get that picture of like what it would look like, what it would feel like, what it would smell like. And that's the that's the trickery of all of this, is that we convince ourselves, like my brain can convince myself of anything. And it's proven that over and over and over again. And it just keeps, that dopamine hit just keeps happening. So when do we start to recognize that that temporary happiness is actually leading to long-term suffering? And the suffering of that stress, that shame, that guilt, that anger, Insert any words that you feel like come up for you when you have gone through the process of riding that roller coaster to the top, and then all of a sudden you're plummeting back down to the bottom and really regretting your decisions. Was it worth it? And being able to stop and really identify when it's happening. That's the hardest part of all of this, is being present enough to actually like not have your brain go down that neural pathway of, if I buy something, it's going to be amazing and you're going to look amazing and you're going to feel amazing and you're going to be amazing. It's like, well, and when I used to put on the outfit that I was planning to wear, at first I felt beautiful. I felt incredible. And then I didn't, right? And then it would just sit in my closet. And one of the biggest pieces that when I was really working on my financial sobriety and when I was so focused on paying off my debt. If you haven't listened to that lesson, I don't remember what one it is, but I talk about my story. And so with that, I actually had, because I had left my corporate job as a financial advisor, and I had a closet full of designer name brand beautiful dresses. And what felt really, really good and right for me is that I donated them to a local women's shelter for abused women, that the women would use them to be able to start their new life and get a new job, have something to wear. And that felt so rewarding to me. And that in itself was a dopamine hit, right? Being able to feel like you're making a difference. And that's a big piece of the dopamine and our brain on money, is that we have to start to look for different ways to create that happiness, to create that reward feeling to our brain of, starting to feel good with other things other than spending money. This is a little bit, proceed with caution with this tip, but I do find that it actually does help a lot of people that have a real hard time with online shopping, because that, think, buy, right? We're buying right away, we're getting that reward with the online shopping. Sometimes what can help that is being able to put it in your cart, but then don't check it out. Remember, I talked last lesson about like deleting your credit cards and that from your online shopping websites, apps that you use. And, just even putting it in the cart and envisioning you having that's that dopamine hit. But don't check out. Don't buy it. Just temporarily putting it into your cart. What will also happen is that you may get an email from that company saying like, "Oh, hey, left something in your cart. You need to buy this." And then, then the brain really starts going, right? It's like, "Oh God, I got to buy this. Oh, I really need this. They emailed me and they said I need to buy this." The trickery again of happening with the money is that that's just a system. It's seeing something in there, you're not getting a call from the, president of them thanking you for putting something in your cart and you need to buy it. Nope, it is computer generated and it is telling you that it's using, consumerism and capitalist things to make you believe that you actually needed that. And if that happens, unsubscribe from their emails, immediately take the things out of the cart. But it can sometimes help, is putting it in the cart and then taking it out. You still do get that dopamine hit. So what I want to really draw attention to is the things that will bring up that dopamine. So we've talked about like that anticipation, that fantasizing, that anticipation of like, this is what I'm going to buy. That decision making piece of like convincing yourself that you need it. And again, remember, your brain can convince you of anything. And you already probably have a really big neural pathway in your brain that is really used to buying all that stuff. And it just is automatically going to go there. this is the work, is being able to kind of take a step back. Okay, whoa, 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 right? Whoa, brain, slow it down. So I don't know about you. My brain's a hamster wheel. It just keeps going and going and going and going. And that is the addictive brain. And the addictive brain is, I'm not going to say that it's impossible to keep quiet, but it is hard to keep quiet. It is just our brains are constantly doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's thinking, but it can be to our detriment. We can self-sabotage ourselves really, really easy when we get carried away with our thoughts. And that's exactly what that dopamine hit of that anticipation and that planning and that fantasizing is, just that. We can get a dopamine hit if we are even purchasing stuff for loved ones. So I've seen this a lot where people are finding that they actually like spend money on other people more than they spend money on themselves. And this can be because they're trying to buy people's love. And I know that that sounds really, really harsh. But I mean that in the most gentle way possible, just because, we're trying to sometimes make up for something that maybe we feel like we didn't get as children, right? So we really felt that we lived in a lot of scarcity, that we felt really deprived as children and, not getting things that we wanted. So, especially for those of us who have children, or even those who have nieces, nephews, your friends have kids, you can often think about, well, I'll matter if I buy them this. Oh, they're expecting this. And I'm Auntie Linda. And when Auntie Linda comes, like, it rains presents, right? And yeah, people are going to be really happy to see you when you have presents. But when it comes to kind of the overall overarching with financial sobriety, is being mindful of, like, is that actually serving you? And is that actually serving them? I think that's the biggest piece, right? Is, are they, why should we have people expecting presents from us? Isn't just being there and having a visit and, playing, isn't that a present enough? And we always feel like we have to do something bigger and better. And do we really? Do you really? But I understand that feeling and following through with, well, I have to buy them a present, or I have to do this, or I'm going over to a girlfriend's house, I have to bring this. But do you? I know that society probably tells that you should. Again, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Should you? Is that really what is best for everyone? And not saying that it's a horrible thing to, buy presents and do things like that. But again, is that actually what you should be doing or want to be doing? And just really thinking it through and being present, practicing sober spending, planning it, thinking about it, being mindful, being conscious, being present with what's happening with our spending. And again, we're going to get hit with that dopamine hit if we start to get away with our thoughts. How can we, stop that thought? Thinking. That's one thing that with my meditation practice that the meditation teacher teaches a lot of, is that the practice isn't about not thinking. The practice is noticing that you're thinking and, like trying to like shift away from that a little bit. So when you start to think, it's like thinking. Your brain's doing what it's supposed to do. It's thinking. But how carried away with those thoughts do we actually want to get? Being present to that. So, trying to find some balance in all of this, reaching for different pieces of dopamine to be able to help you, right? So, that could be going for a walk, getting outside. I talked a lot about this in the last lesson about different ways to get dopamine, getting a hug from someone, being able to Have a telephone conversation with your best friend that you haven't talked to for a while. Being able to connect, being in nature, hug a tree, go for a run, go for a hike, go for a swim, go for a paddleboard. I love my paddleboarding. Have a dance, or even just sit and think about something happy, right? Because what we're being taught is that even thinking about something that we want gives us a dopamine hit. What about you make a list of like happy things that have happened to you and are happening in your life? And then when you feel that urge to spend, you can look at that list and think of one thing that's on there and really sit in that moment and remember that. Remember what felt happy, what led up to that. How did you get there? What did it smell like? What did you feel like? And start to connect to yourself that way instead of buying more stuff, trying to chase happiness and using that dopamine hit for temporary happiness. It's a temporary fix for some long term suffering. I have a live class that I'm going to be teaching on Wednesday, August the 30th, and it's going to be about identifying your triggers that you have when you're spending. So, this is a big piece of that dopamine part again, right? Is being able to understand what's happening. So, I'm going to be doing that Wednesday, August 30th at 4 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can register for the class at lindaparmar.com/class. I'll be having a free one. It'll be kind of a workshop style. So I'll have some questions for you, some journaling, and then some live coaching as well, if that resonates for you, if you need some support. lindaparmar.com/live or lindaparmar.com/class to register for the class on August the 30th. I would love to see you there. Thanks so much for tuning into the lesson today. Go get a dopamine hit naturally from something else than spending. Be well. I'll see you next lesson. Bye.